Hey everyone, previously we discussed the context of the homeworld which Peridot came back from. Now let's look at Peridot's own take on things based on being socialized in that kind of environment. This will show just how much being a homeworld gem has impacted her. The first point is the meaning Peridot assigns to short and small. This is important because it's the focal point and the driving premise behind Too Short to Ride. Because of their height, Amethyst and Steven decide to shapeshift. Because of their height again, they decide to look at other attractions like the ring toss, and eventually, because of their height, they try to make her shapeshift and through that exercise get to the bottom of what's making Peridot upset. But short has been associated with Peridot before. In Too Far, Peridot felt bad after Amethyst started ignoring her. Her term for this feeling is feeling small. Peridot isn't the best at expressing her own feelings. Sometimes she can't put her feelings into words while she's feeling them. This is why her tape recorder is significant. She uses it to process her thoughts, and playing them back to herself helps that process. When Peridot says she feels small, clearly something in her has been conditioned to think that small isn't a good thing. When we look at Peridot at her most confident in Back to the Barn, it's when she's using her giant fighting robot. In fact, her idea of strength is exactly that of Steven's idea of strength in Coach Steven. Her robot was huge, bulky, and capable of brute force fighting. But big and bulky isn't Peridot's optimal strategy. Just look at all the events leading up to Catch and Release. Peridot got on Earth alone with nothing but her own intelligence, her limited tech, and a combination of evasive maneuvers and trap setting. This is someone who works best with a lot of information, and then using that information to set up the arena for her to win, not heavy lifting and charging at her enemies. She works best with preparation, not brute force, considering that she nearly succeeded in taking out Garnet and Pearl permanently in Friendship. This was done through a combination of holograms, traps, and quick thinking. In the same episode, she sacrificed her own foot instead of fighting the crystal gems directly. Peridot is clearly at her best when she works like this. So going back to the big-small dichotomy, let's look at Homeworld again. Homeworld, despite being in the technological golden age of their civilization, is still giving big gems like quartzes higher ranks than they do their technicians. This is evidenced by the Ruby Squad calling Jasper the leader of the mission, despite the mission originally being Peridot's. For a better comparison, in our knowledge-based society, doctors and engineers are given the highest salaries, and being a professional comes with a lot of prestige as well. Big and physically strong soldiers would have been the best to decide things in wartime, before modern technology helped Homeworld. But look at Jasper in The Return. She takes out Garnet with a measly stabilizer. Peridot could have done that, and she was about to do that when Pearl, Amethyst, and Steven burst into the deck of the ship. Small isn't inherently a bad thing, but that's how Peridot feels. When Mr. Smiley told her that she was small and needed to grow more, no doubt she was offended. Gems emerge fully grown. Peridot can't grow. It's not in her control. Add to this a layer of her knowing that she's an heir to Peridot, meaning she can't even temporarily grow by shapeshifting, and that explains her reaction in the scene. Mr. Smiley treated her like a child, and Peridot, who up until that point was confident of her own abilities, was visibly upset by that. Her entire stay on Earth has been attempt after attempt to prove she was capable and trying to be proud of who she is despite everything that changed for her. The moment she arrived on Earth for a routine mission, she was attacked and her things were broken. Keep in mind that Peridot has no context of the war and the crystal gems, other than that the Earth used to be a planned colony that was later discarded. Because in Marble Madness, Peridot is surprised when they first appear and declare themselves the crystal gems. From her perspective, she's the underdog of this whole story. And then she was marooned on Earth with the stronger members of her party gone. Take stronger from Peridot's perspective here. Technicians weren't meant to fight, but that's absolutely what Peridot had to do in the episodes leading up to Catch and Release. She was out of her element in that sense. Even after she was working with them to stop the cluster, she wasn't exactly welcomed by the crystal gems. Every time the gems viewed her as going out of line, she was punished with no further explanation. The scenes in which she was tied with a child leash in Too Far and later grabbed by the collar of her uniform in It Could Have Been Great didn't sit right with many viewers for this reason. Peridot said the things she said about fusion as a war machine and Earth as a gem resource was due to what she had been socialized to think. That's all she knows. The crystal gems have a completely different worldview about individualism and life. From Peridot's perspective, she was saying things that she'd probably said in the past that received a positive response and reaffirmation on Homeworld, because that's how Homeworld receives those issues. And it would also make sense that Homeworld didn't give the crystal gem reasons for fighting the war, lest other gems to follow suit. So Homeworld would have tried as much as possible to erase the memory of Earth and the rebellion, and that explains why Peridot doesn't know who the crystal gems even are. Now she's in a completely different context, and has to learn these things on her own, because none of these gems, aside from Steven, made a conscious and consistent effort to teach Peridot their side of the story until much later in the show. The events of Back to the Barn are a good example for Peridot's feelings during the early stages of her stay on Earth. She bests Pearl the way it's accepted on Homeworld through combat, again because Homeworld still seems to put a lot of emphasis on military and on physical strength. And she was expecting the appropriate response after she won, which was that everyone would be on her side. But the crystal gems gather around Pearl and congratulate her. Peridot is visibly confused and asks about the process behind this deliberate move, and the only answer she gets is, "This is how we do things here." She's getting the crystal gems context only in bits and pieces because most of their interactions turn out this way. Peridot doesn't understand these things, but she herself has said that she would like to. And she's not really great at picking up on social cues and at being perceptive with regards to what people are feeling. Thus far, she's learned that she's loved it here on Earth because she has made friends and thus feels a bit more comfortable, but it is seen that she can easily leave this zone of comfort. In Too Short to Ride, she called Mr. Smiley a clod. She says this because she was called small, which conferred her to a lower rank back on Homeworld. She had been away from all that for so long now. Now that it appears to be happening again, it's not something she wants to feel. Peridot wants to feel confident, special, and important. That's a product of her context as a low-ranking technician. But there's been another time she's felt more confident in herself, when she has her limb enhancers. And this is the next topic we're gonna cover. Thanks for watching the video. The writer for this series of videos has been Poet of the Piano. Their Tumblr link is in the description below. And once again, here's a shout out to all my wonderful Patreon supporters.